So it's together in one piece. There are a few notable exceptions to what I've done so far. I've been able to get my 3D printer going and print up some of those smaller components that'll be attached with the final assembly. And I've already gone ahead and primed up some of the smaller parts, and it's just a bit easier to not have those smaller bits attached whilst I'm doing this first round of painting, so that I'm not struggling quite so much to get the spray in and around those tight sort of areas. So those bits will be done individually and then reattached as part of the build. So I can get them out of the way for now. Booster as well comes out, and we can have a look at how it's all been put together. So as I said in the last video, some of these areas where it had a shared wall, I quite literally had to sort of cut out some sections so that that tied in all together better. And now that that's done, it's brought that width measurement back to where it should be. All in all, it's been pretty straightforward. I'll just flip it over so you can see what I've done. So essentially it's just a combination of the super glue to hold everything in place, and then I've got screws and rivets to actually tie them into place permanently, and then in some areas I've used the epoxy putty to reinforce the joins, as well as overlapping some pieces right through the assembly of it, so that where there's two joins that come together, like the piece you can see here where that fake weld is, it's not just relying on that epoxy putty, it means that there's an underlying piece behind there to make that a lot more structurally sound. I've still got to work out what I'm doing as far as the lights and the electronics are concerned, but I've got more than enough internal space here to work out the ideas that I've got in mind for it. So as I said, that's pretty much all in one piece, and I've started going over it and cleaning up the seam lines where they needed to be tidied up. So the thing to do now is to give this a rough coat of primer, and that'll be a reveal coat to sort of show up any areas that I may have missed. And then I'll go through that patching process again before it gets its final coat of primer, and then it'll be ready for the more detailed painting. So that's the first round of painting pretty much done. It's looking pretty good. There's a couple of spots here and there that might need just a little bit more touch up in terms of filler. For the most part, once you start to factor in the weathering of it, I don't think it's going to need very much at all. You can sort of see the types of bits that I'm talking on the bumper, where there's a bit of a seam there that shouldn't be there, and a couple of other bits like that. But for the most part, it's looking pretty good. So for now, I'm going to mix up some filler to do those little patch pieces that I need to do. And whilst that's all setting up, I'm going to start working on the Neutrino wand part of the build. So working out the Neutrino wand, I've printed up and enlarged some plans to the correct scale. And these are good enough that they've got the individual profiles left and right, front and back, which gives you a looking down the barrel perspective as well as a view from behind. But I don't really have anything that breaks down the individual components of it to make sure that that scale is tracking properly. I'm using the parts I've already produced from 3D printing and stuff, and you can see there's a couple of components that match in quite well with what we're doing. And that makes me confident enough in these plans that I can use them directly to work out the individual component piece breakdown in terms of side panels and all that sort of stuff. That's allowed me to work out the main body component piece in terms of getting the shape and size right. I've got a couple of different orientations of these plans as well, which gives me the left and right profiles of it, as well as what it looks like from underneath. And then the other one there is obviously looking straight down on it. So these plans will be really good in terms of working out the individual placement of parts and making sure that I'm not drifting off sides. So before I finish this off as a finished piece, I thought I'd just show you how I've come up with the individual component pieces. That's currently just taped together. So I'll just break that down now so you can see how those pieces go together. That's the individual parts laid out. There's not a great deal of complexity to it. The biggest trick has been working out these two angles. That's the back section of it, and this is also the back section of it. So when they come together, they fold together, and this curve matches this curve, and that sort of completes it all together. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward in the way that it folds up like any of the other boxes. It's just that when the box sides come together, it just forms this weird angle section. So that closes it up that way, and the last piece folds over to create that sort of step section. This piece has taken me a little bit of time to get right because it is going to form the basis of what everything else is mounted off. So I want to make sure that it's pretty well right before I continue with it. I'm also going to put it together in such a way that this side section is removable so that I'll have greater access to the internal components if I ever need to get to them. So that's the bulk of the component pieces made up. Some pieces are 3D printed, like the handles and some of the smaller components. Some of the little knob control pieces and everything else, now that they've actually been 3D printed, I'll probably just use them as a size reference and make up metal versions of my own. I sort of did that with the clipart piece. The little knob on top is a 3D printed piece, but the base part and the tubing is pretty much something that I've made up myself. I've managed to do a transfer of the clipart logo on there as well. It's not very sharp, so I might have another go at doing that a bit later. And technically this is the one that goes on the pack, not the wand anyway, so I'll probably be making up a different version of that as well. As I've said though, I've done most of the component pieces in that same composite board that I did the pack with, and that's given us a pretty good representation of what we're looking for. At the moment it all still breaks down into its individual pieces, which has left me plenty of internal space to work with, and at this stage I'm going to be setting it up so that both the bottom and the side will come off for easy access. The heatsink piece has been made out of 3 other smaller pieces. They weren't big enough independently to make the one piece, so I've cut them up and reconfigured them, sort of squashed them together to get the size of piece that we need. It's not an exact match to the film version, but the size and scale and the number of fins are a match to it, so at this stage I'm happy to go with that, and I can always get a better one in the future. I still need to cut in some of the surface details as far as the venting and the section for the lights and cabling and switches and all that sort of thing. And as I said before, it's pretty much an independent build within itself. But all in all, I think it's going to match in pretty well with the look that I'm going for. But anyway guys, that'll be the update for this time. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.